Monday, December 28th, 2015. Derek Davis here with Rob Vino, sportsbettingtoday.us, and Rob Vino Sports. Two bowl games today. Let's go with the second one here, 5 p.m. Eastern kickoff. Game 239, 240, Central Michigan and Minnesota from Detroit, Michigan in the Quick Lane Bowl. Game played at Ford Field, Dome Stadium. No reason to check the weather in this one, Rob. And two teams here really ending the season different fashion. Minnesota 1-5 straight up to end the year. Although they were 4-2 against the number during that period, Rob, but they did struggle down the stretch. Central Michigan, on the other hand, Rob, they're struggling early, although they were beautiful against the number almost all year, Rob. But to begin the season straight up, they lost to Oklahoma State, Syracuse, and Michigan State to start the season 1-3, but then played pretty well down the stretch, Rob. And in a position here to play, which should be a pretty good Central Michigan contingency as far as fans there at Ford Field. Wouldn't call it a home game necessarily, but still ought to be a good contingency there from Central Michigan. Get to play a Minnesota team that, like I mentioned, struggled down the stretch. Head coaching issues there for the Golden Gophers. Neglected to mention the point spread in this one. Minnesota, a 6-point favorite, total of 48. The game opened at Minnesota -5.5 and 49.5. Rob, I think that's too many points for Central Michigan. What do you think?
Yeah, I was more inclined to look the other way, Derek, and took some -4 earlier this morning with Minnesota. This game, interesting dynamic as far as the way it's been bet, with all the money up until about an hour and a half ago coming in on Central Michigan, betting this game all the way down, as I mentioned, to -4, which to me seemed like a very, very low number, and then only to be pushed back up to 6 within the last 90 minutes. So certainly Minnesota money flying in right now. Perhaps a little bit of baiting going on by big money syndicates and whatnot, but we will see when the game takes place which side was right, the early money on Central Michigan or the late money here on Minnesota. Power ratings do suggest Minnesota on the neutral field 8 points better than Central Michigan. So to me, when I saw 4 being only half of what power ratings made this game to be, and then you go through the fundamentals of this one, and it seems like Minnesota at that price was very good. At 6, yeah, a little bit debatable, but let's go through what's going to happen here on the field, or what, fundamentally looks like will happen on the field here today. When you start with Central Michigan, first things first, it's a one-dimensional team. They throw the football with quarterback Cooper Rush, and that's where it ends. They throw the football, 313 yards per game. That's how they get their yardage. That's how they get their points. They played 2 Power 5 schools this season, Oklahoma State and Michigan State. Against neither were they able to score points. Cooper Rush, while he put up somewhat impressive numbers against those two teams, he throws for 265 and completes 69% against Oak State, but in the end they only score 13 points. And then against Michigan State, Cooper Rush throws for 285, almost 67%. They only scored 10 points. So again, nice numbers, no points. Michigan State didn't even have a great secondary this year. Oklahoma State, decent pass defense, but obviously the Power 5 schools were able to have him dink and dunk, and not much else other than that. Without the ability to run against this secondary, I think it'll be very troublesome for Cooper Rush and the Central Michigan attack. Minnesota's got one of the best secondaries you'll find in the country. They've got NFL guys back there, and with Eric Murray and Brian Body Calhoun, they're going to have, in Central Michigan I speak of, is going to have trouble. Cooper Rush likes to spread it around, but the reality is he's only got one legitimate, really big-time threat at wide receiver in Jesse Kroll. That's where he always looks. Anthony Rice has caught 56 balls as opposed to Kroll's 59, but Kroll makes the bigger catches. Kroll's the #1 target. I think Murray could take him out of this game and force Cooper Rush to look elsewhere, which would be in my estimation, devastating for Central Michigan because they just can't run the ball to open things up. Minnesota is not the greatest pass rush team this season, but if they contain the run and they force Cooper Rush to have to throw almost every down, which Central Michigan likes to do a lot of anyway, then that pass rush could be disruptive here tonight on the artificial turf. Minnesota's trying to break a 7-game bowl losing streak. We know the situation with their head coach. Obviously, Jerry Kill, very tearful resignation. Tracy Claeys, who has stepped in before, steps in now. He is the new head coach of this team. Fired both coordinators at the end of the season, so he's certainly remaking the coaching staff a little bit. But Tracy Claeys knows what he's doing. He knows this team's personnel inside and out. And I think we need to look at one thing. If we flip the coin and look at Minnesota's offense against the Central Michigan defense, Tracy Claeys had made a statement a few games back that he was going to go to some things to help improve the offensive output statistically and point scoring wise. And, you know, it's funny. He said that Jerry Kill had these things in his back pocket the whole time, but they never really used them. Minnesota, very pedestrian on offense. Mitch Leidner, not the greatest throwing quarterback. In fact, he ranks, as one of the poorer throwing quarterbacks in NCAA football. But on determination and a make a play type ability, Mitch Leidner ranks right up there with anybody. Makes big plays, very determined quarterback, can make plays with his legs. He does cause some problems for teams. If he has a good passing day, he's really tough to handle. But let's get back to Tracy Claeys and improving the offense here. Tracy Claeys, since he's taken over, you just take a look at what Minnesota did in the back half of the season from an offensive standpoint. Let's just go through it here. Scored 26 points against Michigan, an outstanding defense under Jim Harbaugh this year. 26 points, and they're stopped on the 1-yard line on the last play of the game on a quarterback sneak. That touchdown goes in. They score 33 against Michigan, which is extremely impressive. 26 is impressive enough against Michigan, but 33, really, when you think they were only a yard away from that at the end of the game. Pretty good offensive output. Come back only 14 against Ohio State. Come back after that with 35 against Iowa. Certainly Iowa, a top-tier defense. That's a great number. 32 against Illinois. Illinois, pretty good defense this year, but not great. And then 21 against an excellent Wisconsin defense. The one thing all of those defenses have in common is they're light years ahead of Central Michigan. For Minnesota to put up those types of numbers scoreboard-wise against that type of opposition, to me, indicates they'll have no trouble putting up points here against Central Michigan. Central Michigan does not rush the passer at all. So Leidner could have all year to throw the football tonight. Central Michigan in 12 games only has 12 sacks. Not a pressure type team. They've had a good defensive secondary this year. That's been a strong point, but they haven't been good at the point of attack where Minnesota figures to go after them with their rushing game. Boy, a lot of fundamentals add up to Minnesota here against this Central Michigan team. This is another 5-7 club, Minnesota. The first two in bowl games have won this year. I think San Jose State was a 5-7 winner. Nebraska the other night was a 5-7 winner. Now we've got Minnesota playing with a lot of emotion for Tracy Claeys, a lot of determination to try and break the 7-game losing streak, and a lot of fundamental advantages as well. I don't think, what Central Michigan does best is what Minnesota's defense stops the best. So I don't know that Cooper Rush can have any type of a big game here against them. And for Minnesota, I think they'll find at the point of attack they're the far superior team. They're not very flashy in the way they score points, but the back half of the season, they scored points. And I wouldn't be surprised if Minnesota doesn't get between 7 and 13 points from their defense. Interceptions of Cooper Rush, like I say, Murray. Obviously on Kroll, if he gets Kroll singled up here, could be very, very problematic for this Central Michigan offense. And then Buddy Calhoun, those two guys, extremely capable of taking one back to the house. As far as injuries are concerned in that secondary, you get Jalen Myrick back as well. This is a real good defensive secondary. I think Minnesota has some edges here. Um, the value is lessened now that the game's gone from 4 to 6. I'm real happy with the -4 that I'm holding, but at -6, could Minnesota win by a touchdown? I really think they could. If you just look back at Oklahoma State playing a lousy game, basically, against Central Michigan to start the year, winning by 11. Michigan State not playing a great game, beating this team by 20. Oklahoma State and Michigan State are better teams than Minnesota is, but defensively, Minnesota has the capability to hold Central to 10 or 13, just like those two teams did. And for them to get to 24-27, I don't think is that hard against Central Michigan. This isn't the MAC anymore. This is a big-time defensive secondary, and I think Cooper Rush will have trouble. So I'd lean towards I'd lean towards Minnesota here. We've seen a lot of action on the total in this game as far as under is concerned. Guys liking to bet this one under from 49.5 down to 48 in most spots. Can't say that I disagree, but I think in modern day college football, it's hard for me to play a game under 48, so I'd probably let it go.